themselves. And it's very important to have a system, both in science and in just investigative principles, that make sure that an investigation is done with credibility and integrity, and to make sure that ultimately the perpetrators are brought to justice, and that individual that has been murdered can't tell you who committed the crimes. The crime scene and all of the science that goes with that crime scene is one of the main ways that's accomplished.
A scientist named Dr. Charles Norris was able to reform the medical legal system as chief medical examiner in New York City in the 1920s by removing corruption and introducing scientific principles. From the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, the medical legal system, which was charged with collecting data on dead bodies, was run by politically appointed, untrained, corrupt coroners. To best understand how they came to this position, we need to examine the political system in New York, known as Tammany Hall. Coroners were appointed as a reward for their political support instead of their scientific skills. The patronage system that placed them in the coroner's office created a corrupt medical legal system of bribes and special favors.
So if you've got a community member who's rallying support among the members of their respective community in an individual borough or ward of New York City, they might actually receive a municipal job for their support by the Tammany Hall political organization. That's patronage.
In the early 1900s, death was a lucrative business. Coroners took bribes to change the cause of death for businesses or insurance companies who didn't want to pay grieving families. For the right amount of money, coroners would provide the same services for wealthy families who wanted to cover up a suicide or murder. In addition, coroners would receive kickbacks from funeral homes and would only release the body to the undertakers paying them, adding another financial burden to grieving families. Coroners were making big money on dead bodies. Not only did coroners receive a salary, but they earned a commission every time they examined a body. One drowning victim cost New York thousands because the coroner billed the city every time he saw the body bob out of the Hudson River. Due to the incompetence of these political appointees, there was a lack of scientific principle in the coroner system. As a result, few coroners had the qualifications or experience to perform the duties of their office. Some can neither read nor write. Those who had medical training had lost their practices as a result of their own incompetence. Of the 800 death certificates issued by coroners, 320 did not prove the cause of death. In other words, 40% of all death certificates were inaccurate. At the time, autopsies were performed by different doctors, sometimes in their own homes, which would contaminate evidence. If toxicology tests needed to be run, they were sent to chemists who had no background in toxicology or criminal investigation. In 1915, the people of New York City were ready for reform in their own communities, their country, and their world. This was the Progressive Era, a time known for its radical changes in society and technology.
We're dealing with the Progressive Era by and large, and this was perhaps one of the most climactic times in American history because we had a number of countervailing movements and influences all occurring during the same period. We had the advent of the Second Industrial Revolution, much like the technological revolution that we've experienced during our generation. And there was the advent of natural and social sciences during this era, which also gave scientific principles to undergird what folks were trying to do. And in essence, what progressives were trying to do, whether it involved the temperance movement or the enactment of child labor laws or cleaning up the city's infrastructure, It all involved addressing our environment, because the hope was that by changing our environment, we could change the individual.
Added to the reformations of this period, one event occurred which brought the problems of the coroner system to the public's attention. When New York Mayor Mitchell discovered the corpse of his closest friend was mishandled by these coroners, he was enraged. In retaliation, he appointed Commissioner Leonard Wallstein to conduct an investigation of all New York City's government institutions. Wallstein declared New York's coroner system was a public scandal and a disgrace. The coroner's office was in complete chaos. Wallstein recommended that legislative action alone can furnish any thorough remedy for the wretched situation which has been found. Wallstein's report caused such an uproar that New York's Governor Charles S. Whitman demanded the political coroner system be abolished and replaced by the medical examiner system. All members of this new system must be trained physicians with a background in medicine or pathology, and had to prove credentials and skills before they were assigned to the post. A chief medical examiner would supervise the office. This recommendation was passed by the New York Senate. On January 1st, 1918, Dr. Charles Norris was appointed to be the chief medical examiner for the city of New York. He completely reformed the medical legal system in New York City. Unlike the earlier coroners, Dr. Charles Norris was well trained and qualified. He had studied medicine in Europe and was the director of laboratories at Bellevue Hospital. He stood for 3 progressive era ideas: service, education, and research. He strived to do these things every day. When Charles Norris became the medical examiner for the state of New York, gone were the days of corruption and greed. Dr. Norris was financially secure and was above corruption. He was not in the job to make money. Dr. Norris was underpaid and used his own funds to purchase lab equipment and also to pay his technician's salary. He also saw the medical examiner's office as a way to serve his community. He worked with colleges to train students who wanted to go into his field of work and would only hire those who demonstrated the medical techniques needed for the job of medical examiner. He refused to do special favors for influential families, insurance companies, big businesses, and funeral homes. Charles Norris began the golden age of forensics. Dr. Norris created the first toxicology lab for our country. By hiring Dr. Alexander Gettler, he was able to give New York its first toxicology lab. Dr. Gettler was then able to research and create innovative forms of detecting toxins to finally bring notorious poisoners to justice. Dr. Norris was then able to set standards for identification techniques and create procedures to be followed when investigating crime scenes. All autopsies were performed in Bellevue Hospital labs. Outside doctors and chemists were no longer needed. We can be thankful today for these reforms that revolutionized the medical legal system. The work of Dr. Charles Norris had a lasting and significant impact. Large cases that baffled the police were solved due to his commitment. Today, his labs at Bellevue Hospital is considered to be the birthplace of American forensics.
If we weren't able to solve crimes and bring people to justice, I think just from a sociological standpoint, it would be devastating to our society. People, very often, deterrence keeps people from committing crimes. Not always, but hopefully more often than not.
John E. McGeehan, the district attorney of New York, said that Charles Norris' work made dead men tell more tales than live ones ever could.